Hey, welcome back to my channel. I am super excited to jump into today's topic because it's so important if you're dealing with autoimmune disease and if you're struggling with frequent autoimmune flare-ups. Today we are talking about gluten, what it is, why it's such a problem for so many people, and how it really messes with your gut and your immune system. And more importantly, is gluten wrecking your health? I'm Jennifer Franchak, a functional nutritionist, and if you haven't already checked out my video on leaky gut, I highly recommend that you do so because a lot of what I'm going to be talking about in today's video really ties into that, and it'll give you a lot of information to help you understand what I'm talking about today a little better. And since there's so much to unpack regarding gluten, this is actually going to be part one of a two-part series. I don't want to overwhelm you with a lot of information in one video, but I want to make sure that you walk away with a clear understanding and that you really understand why gluten is such a problem for us, especially if we have an autoimmune condition. Okay, so let's get into it. What is gluten? And here's a fun fact. The word gluten actually comes from the Latin word for glue. So yeah, it basically is a sticky protein that keeps your favorite breads and muffins and cakes together. So then why is gluten such a problem? How can something so delicious be so problematic, right? Okay, so here's the tricky thing when it comes to gluten. Gluten is hard for us to digest, and that's even for people who don't have any major health issues. And one of the proteins in it, gliadin, is actually indigestible. So that's right, our bodies literally cannot break down that part of gluten. And for a long time, doctors thought that only people who had celiac disease really had to worry about gluten. But more and more research is showing us that even people without celiac disease can be negatively affected by gluten. So it's not just in your head if you're having a lot of symptoms when you eat gluten. There are real reasons why your body might not like it. So I just want to take a moment and quickly talk to you about celiac disease because I mentioned that earlier. Celiac disease is an autoimmune condition and it affects about 1% of Americans. But here's the kicker. According to the Celiac Disease Foundation, approximately 60 to 70% of people with celiac don't even know that they have it. It's crazy, right? So when someone with celiac disease eats gluten, even if it's just a crumb that got on their food due to cross-contamination, their immune system freaks out. They can have immediate reactions like nausea, vomiting, intense digestive symptoms. And their body really sees gluten as an invader and attacks it like a virus. And again, this is because celiac disease is an autoimmune condition. The small intestine is lined with these finger-like projections called villi, and the villi help you to absorb your nutrients. And in people with celiac disease, gluten damages these villi over time, turning what should look like a shag carpet into a flat, bald surface. So this makes it really hard for people with celiac disease to fully absorb their nutrients, which can lead to malnutrition and a whole bunch of other health issues. But you may be asking, okay, I don't have celiac, but what about the rest of us? So even if you don't have celiac disease, gluten can still be problematic, which I mentioned earlier. And that's where non-celiac gluten sensitivity comes in. Newer research is showing us that gluten might trigger symptoms like brain fog, joint pain, digestive issues, headaches, and a whole bunch of other things in people that don't have celiac disease. And these people often experience symptoms that are less immediate, so they're not going to have that immediate reaction like people with celiac do. But it's very frustrating because you don't want to have to deal with these symptoms like brain fog and the whole host of other things that can go along with non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So why does this happen? Well, it turns out that eating gluten can increase something in our bodies called zonulin. And zonulin is a protein that regulates the tight gap junctions in your gut lining. So basically it keeps the cells that line your gut nice and tight and helps to form that barrier that we talked about before that keeps things out like bacteria, toxins, and undigested food particles. It keeps that out of your bloodstream. And when that happens, this is going to trigger an immune response. So you can think of it like a bouncer at a club, okay? Zonulin opens the door and lets all the wrong people in, and then suddenly chaos breaks out in your gut. And your immune system sends out these white blood cells that will help you to fight off the invaders. And at that point, the inflammation party begins. So how is this all related to autoimmune disease? Well, when your gut lining is compromised and your immune system is constantly being triggered by things like gluten, it can lead to chronic inflammation because your immune system is constantly being activated, right? And we know that inflammation is a huge driver of autoimmune disease. And in fact, recent studies have shown us that certain microbial overgrowths and pathogens can actually trigger specific autoimmune diseases. So interesting. So for example, there's H. pylori, and this has been linked to autoimmune gastritis, and there's Klebsiella bacteria, which has been associated with ankylosing spondylitis. And there's a whole bunch of other correlations that are associated with our gut bacteria in relation to triggering autoimmune disease and inflammation. Gluten, zonulin, and microbial imbalances really kind of create the perfect storm for autoimmune flare-ups. So let's get real. If you have an autoimmune condition, and I think I've said this before in other videos, gluten is not your friend. Not only does it contribute to inflammation, but it also increases zonulin levels, which is going to lead to leaky gut, which, as we know, is a major root cause of autoimmune disease. And I get it, having to give up gluten is hard. Trust me, I love bread and I love baked goods, but I also love feeling good too. And it's really a trade-off, right? But it's one worth making, especially if you're dealing with autoimmune flare-ups and chronic inflammation. And if you're wondering now what you can eat without gluten, don't worry, I've got you covered. In the second video, we're going to be diving into all of the delicious and gluten-free alternatives that you can eat so that you don't feel deprived. Spoiler alert, there is a life after gluten, and it's actually pretty delicious. So that's it for today. I really hope that this video gave you some clarity on why gluten can be such a problem if you're struggling with autoimmune disease. If you have any questions, I would love to hear from you. Just drop them in the comments below or shoot me a message. Like I said, I would love to connect with you. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss out on the second video where I'm going to get into all of the delicious gluten-free things that you can eat and give you my best gluten-free tips. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.